Hello, this is Dr. Roger Elmer, Advanced Neuro-Spinal Solutions, and this month we're talking about stress and anxiety. We've talked about cranial nerve 10 2 months ago. We talked about sleep last month. This is the stress month and anxiety month. We're going to break down the aspects of the spinal cord and brainstem, which we call the car in the nervous system in neuroscience. And then we'll talk also about the brain. But in this one, we're going to talk more about the psychology of stress. The discussion is stress management versus stress direction. Now, I call it stress direction. It's not the common term out there. Stress management is we're trying to manage or handle our stress, versus stress direction is we take control of our stress. We've talked about before that stress is good. That's a totally diametrically opposed to what most people are saying out there. Stress is bad, it causes all kinds of things. No, we're discussing how important. We define stress as anything that causes us to have what we call the adaptation response. The father of stress psychology said that kissing passionately and confronting a Bengal tiger can be equally stressful and yet equally not agreeable. That's a direct quote, by the way. And that's true. So you can have good stress and bad stress. Good stress he called use stress or useful stress, whereas he called the bad stress the distress. Well, in this case, what we want to do is we want to talk about the psychology of stress and how to deal with it in terms of energy systems. In this, we need to know what kind of stress we're dealing with. And there are three major kinds: physical stress, mental stress, and emotional stress. And in each one of these, we need to learn how do we, number one, recover from that stress, and number two, toughen to the stress. It's very important. It's not going to be readily apparent. We'll start with physical stress because it's more apparent. It's more clear. When you do a physical activity, a high-level physical activity, and it drains your body from a physical point of view, the way to recover becomes apparent. You need a physical rest. You need to not do things that are going to demand of your physical body. That's clear. How do you toughen to physical stress? Well, you're going to do things in a safe environment that allow you to cause you to be able to do higher and higher and higher levels of physical activity. We know in work-related situations that if you're lifting something on a regular basis that's 40% of your 1 rep max, it's not if you're going to get hurt, it's when you're going to get hurt. And so if we take that, our 40%, and we raise it up so that is just 20% of our 1 rep max, or in the other direction, we can modify that. If it becomes easy for us, then we're not going to get injured as easily, or maybe even not at all. And so that is the concept that we want to see here. Is we want to recover from the physical stress, and we want to toughen to the physical stress. Well, it's not as easy when we talk about mental stress. How do we relax? How do we recover from mental stress? Well, we think it's physical relaxation, and that's not necessarily the case. Oftentimes, it has to do with creativity, fun, laughter, doing things with a different part of our mind than was demanded in the activity that demanded the mental stress. So if your left side of the brain is doing all the thinking, you need to do a lot of right brain stuff, which is usually very creative. So getting involved in that, watching a fun or funny movie, something that causes you to recover hormonally as a result of that. One of the people at the brain class last night talked about that she has a good cry. that can be very cleansing, even better than a bran muffin, right? So that can be possible in your recovery. How do you know if you're recovered? In physical stress, we know we're recovered when we feel physically rejuvenated. In mental stress, we feel mentally recovered or rejuvenated, which means we feel like we could potentially go back to the thought processes or the thought demands that we had before. How do we toughen to mental stress? To mental stress is to put demand, or toughening is to put a demand on the mental activities, the kind of mental activities that you would automatically have a demand. My son is going through school right now, and he's taking pre-calculus, and it's pushing him a little bit towards the limit, and it's a little bit difficult. How do you increase that? By doing more problems. By once you're recovered, at some point doing something that forces you to think at a higher level and demands of those parts of the brain that they do greater activity. That causes those parts of the system. We talked about plasticity in the past. We talked about angiogenesis, which is you're increasing the blood flow system that goes to those areas that you're demanding. All of that takes place, but we have to ask it to do more. Well, the hardest one to deal with is emotional stress, and that is the plague of our generation, because most of our jobs, no matter what they are, has a high degree of emotional stress within it. So we have to know, number one, how to recover from emotional stress. Now, when you go home from a highly emotional day and you sit down on the couch, it is difficult to pull your rear end out of that couch, because you don't want to get up. And so you're thinking that it's physical rest that will recover you. But you'll notice that you don't really recover. You may feel like, okay, I'm a little better off, but you don't feel recovered. You don't feel rejuvenated, like you're ready to go back at it emotionally again. Not at all. So the recovery is, and the one I recommend it, and this is information from a guy named Jim Lear, very interesting character who's worked with a lot of high-level athletes, mostly tennis players, some of the top tennis players in the world. He also worked with Dan Jansen, and when he was having his struggles and choking all the time, and he worked with him to where he wound up getting the gold medal in the 1,000 meters. But in all of that, he was teaching him how to control those stresses, to control the energy. Well, if you want to recover, the answer is non-competitive physical activity. Competitive physical activity demands emotional resilience and strength. You don't want to do that. If you're a tennis player, you don't want to play with somebody. You want to beat the ball against the wall. And how long do you go, and how hard? You go as hard as the emotional stress was, and you go long enough to where you feel rejuvenated from an emotional point of view. And when you get there, you know you're done. Well, how do we, number two, toughen to those stresses? To toughen to those stresses is competitive physical activity. It's a safe, laboratory type, sterile environment where you can practice being emotionally tough. Practice taking control and being in control of your emotions. When you screen out the bad calls, or screen out the trash talking, the mental games that are being played, screen out those that are watching. When you can screen that out and you can get yourself back to that place where you're in control and you're thinking about your strategy and that, you are learning that emotional stress. If you're a CEO and you've got a $2 million deal and it's going to help you make payroll, that is not the time to practice emotional stress. You want to already have heightened that ability so that you can look very cool and calm and collected, and you can think clearly under those circumstances. This is how you grow that skill so that you can handle emotional stresses at progressively higher and higher levels. We want to create the ability to do more rather than less. The stress management model wants you to manage the stress Now, if you look at the model that I continuously put out here in the office and in videos, I talk about that you're a Ferrari, and that in that you're a Ferrari, you always want to be in the driver's seat. You never want to be in the passenger seat. What does that mean? You never want it driving you. You want to be in control, because even if it's a bad ride, at least you're controlling it and you're not waiting for it to crash. And with this model, you're given a way to be in the driver's seat, to control it, to direct, and that's why I use stress direction as the best model. Now, we can talk a lot about other factors, and that which I already mentioned. We can also talk about how we view stress, which is a part of, a big part of what we're going to discuss this month. We're going to go over that. But remember, we need to know what kind of stress that we're under, and that we have to appropriately, two things, recover from that stress, and we have to toughen to that stress. And then we become better and better, stronger and stronger. This is Dr. Elmer, Advanced Neurospinal Solutions. If you have any questions, please put them online to us. I'm happy to do other videos, but also sometimes we do some responses via email. and remember, we're here when you're ready to take your life back. Thank you.